Okay, Pastor Mitchell, I'm going to call this segment, How's This Going For You?
All right.
Or maybe Quick Hits, or What's Up With That? All right, so here's your first question. Let's talk about church meetings.
What?
Yes. Or as we call them now, business meetings.
Okay.
Or church conference.
Church conference. I like that. Church conference.
How's it going for you?
How's church conference going for? I've been encouraged the last few church conferences. They're not my favorite thing to do, but I think that they're important because it gives me an opportunity, one, to look back and track how we're doing. And so, I classically, when people do church meeting movie scenes and TV scenes, you always got somebody jumping out with a knife and drag out fights. And I don't know what meetings were like before I got here, but I do know that when I think of church meetings in general as a genre, they are contentious and all that. And so my goal has always been to conduct them in a way that is lively, to accentuate the positive, to explain the confusing things, and try to help people see the big picture so that we don't get tied down in the weeds. It is difficult because we are a Baptist body. There's a democratic element to it, so we get to vote on things and all that kind of stuff. So you want room for people to be able to express what they want to express and talk about what they want to talk about. But I also, as the one that's presiding over the meetings, I have to kind of do that in a way that keeps us on track, because we can get caught down rabbit holes and loopholes and far away from where we were trying to go. So part of how I've tried to do that is twofold. One, we're always going to start with worship.
Okay.
Yes. This is the day, something like that.
Yes, and you do that well.
Every time.
Every time, yes.
Because I don't want you to start from the place of we're coming to this business meeting and there's a different tenor to the room than it is on Sunday. Now it is going to be different, but I don't want the spirit to change because we're talking business.
Okay.
Let's start with the same spirit that we come in on Sunday morning. And it feels good to me in the house on Sunday morning. So I want it to feel good for business meeting too.
All right.
So we're going to begin with This Is the Day, or something that is upbeat. And I'm going to sing it for real. And I hope that you'll sing it with me.
Yes, and you do that. Yes.
And I'm going to smile and all that. And then my goal going into church meeting, so for me, it's normally a 3 or 4 week process preparing for church meeting. I know it's one night, 2 hours, or an hour last time, praise the Lord. Yeah. But the goal for me is I'm digging into all of the numbers, all of the data, all of the decisions that have been made, so that by the time I finish my report, I've tried to answer all the questions I think could come, as many as I can anticipate in my report. Now, I know that we often are waiting on the finance report is a big piece, but even in the finance report, to look at the numbers outside of the larger story is not always as informative as it needs to be. It needs to be connected to something.
Yes.
And my goal as the leader is to say, okay, to chart, okay, this is how we've grown numerically, in worship, in giving. Even if our giving shows maybe a down, it looks like a down, but this is why. Here are the repairs that were done that we didn't anticipate, but thank God we had reserve that we'd saved up for repairs, right? To be able to communicate, it's all about, for me, the way that you tell the story, and to be able to tell the story accurately, but positively means I have to prepare weeks in advance.
Okay. Yes.
And really look through what we're going to present, look at the numbers, make sense of them, interpret them. This is like a text. All right, this is what it says, but what does it mean?
Right.
it may mean something that on its surface, this, no. What it really means is this isn't what we budgeted for this year, but this ceiling fell open. We repaired it. And to repair it, we pulled from money that we saved to repair things that get broken. Right. So I've tried very hard to be super prepared for a church meeting. And like I said, that's normally a few weeks to a month process for me. And once it's over, okay, now we go to the next one, But I've been pleased that we have shown over the last 4 or 5 meetings just continuous growth. I've been able to say the same thing. We're continuing to grow. We're continuing to grow the ministry. We're continuing to grow our attendance. We're continuing to grow in baptism and membership. And to me, that's always more important than getting into the weeds about the money, which is what some people come most focused on. But the money is a part of a larger story of what's happening in the church. And there are some things that it doesn't reveal. It doesn't reveal, how that money is being collected.
Okay.
I've talked about in some meetings the how there's a small number of people that have a big burden on the church in terms of our financial perspective, which is not necessarily a phenomenon that is just 31st Street.
Right.
But so to me, it's not wise. When we come in wanting to talk about money, it's not wise to come in as a blank slate, because there's a story that informs all of that. Part of that story might be which we've tried to, I've tried to say as it relates to our new giving campaign is we're all going to give differently. What I'd like to see is everybody give something.
Right. Okay.
And I know that as it relates to like church business, the finance in particular, when we talk about giving and things like that, one of my goals is that I always say we are striving to be a tithing church, and that's giving the 10%. But I know everybody's not going to tithe. And so what I would like, though, is for everybody to give something.
Okay.
Regularly, continuously, as you make your way to tithing. The pastor in me says, I want you to get to the place where you're giving the 10%. And we heard Pastor Mitchell last month, in the month, by talking about that commitment. And he told our story that I've been tithing since I was a child. I've done it since I've been here. And it's not just on what the church as my salary, but anything I make out in the streets, that's coming in as a tithe. That's just how I was raised. And I know it's easier to do that when we raise young people to do that early. And for some people, the idea of tithing, jumping in as a 50-year-old who has done this certain way forever is a difficult conversation. But if you can't get there, what I would like for you to do is say, if I'm being blessed by the church, if I'm being impacted by the church, and if I'm committed to being a member of the church, a regular pattern of giving for all of us is what I'd like to see, So whatever the best you can is until you can get to what I think is the biblical standard, which is 10%. And that offering that goes above that is where we like to be. So that was a lot in one section, but those are all the things I think about when it comes to church meeting. What is the spirit of the meeting? I don't want the spirit in the room to feel different. It will, but not radically different than what it feels like on Sunday morning. Because we're still in church, we're still family, regardless of whatever is going to be presented. And normally, what is presented is good.
Yes.
Or it has been good over the last few years. So I'm wanting us to come in not feeling like, oh, here we go again.
Right.
Who's gonna fight this time? Like, no. This is the day that the Lord has made.
Yeah.
All right. And if we do that, and I've tried to be even shorter in my presentation too, because I remember the first one, I think I was up for like 50 minutes. I don't do that anymore, but it's easier now. I got my legs under me. So
okay.
Yeah.
Good presentations.
Try.
Tell me, what do you enjoy most? Is there something you enjoy most? Let's say like this. Did I ask you that? Am I repeating myself?
You are not.
Was it the preaching, the listening to others preach, coaching, teaching, something else?
Yeah, so I think my natural gifting and my craft, preaching is like my life, but what I enjoy the most is teaching.
Okay.
What I enjoy the most is teaching in a conversational place where, yes, I'm presenting, but then we can have conversation about what I'm presenting about. So when I have the opportunity to do that, whether that's, we just walked deacons through a year of ordination training. We walked preachers through 6 months of training for ordinations last year. I'm in the ministers in training with 2 of our new ministers in training, Sister Kelly and Sister Avis. Those opportunities where I'm teaching you something, I can see the light bulb go off, but we can talk about it. So Sundays, you can talk about the sermon and we talk about it on the podcast, but I'm not talking back to you in real time. But I love being able to pour out, but I can see the light bulb because we're having conversation about what I'm talking about. So teaching is probably my favorite thing to do, teaching, coaching, if you will. That's internal and outside of the house. I love the opportunity to pour into people in areas that maybe they don't know as much about as they want to know. And what I love about being pastor here is the humility of some of the team. We've got, as we mentioned in another section, we've got preachers who, are twice as old as me, but are willing to say, hey, can you sit down and talk to me about the structure of a sermon? And, what did you think of this? And what did you think of that? And giving me the opportunity to say, hey, I appreciate that. Because sometimes it's not the amount of years you've done the thing if you haven't had the opportunity to do it all the time. So for me as a preacher, I'm doing it all the time. Whereas you may have been doing it for 30 years, but maybe you do it once a year.
Right. Okay.
And I do 60, 70 sermons in a year, so it's been really cool to have the opportunity to, with young and old, seasoned, be able to find ways to teach some things that maybe you don't know as well, or a different perspective on it. And even the way that we try to go about it Sunday mornings in the preaching moment, I'm trying to find something that maybe someone who's been in church their whole life, you haven't looked at that verse that way. Okay. Or there's a piece of this that you haven't considered. Yeah. That's always exciting for me, to teach you something new or try to push you to look at it from a different perspective.
Now, are you preaching more now than before? See, I was thinking now as a pastor, senior pastor, you might be preaching more now, but maybe not. Maybe that's an assumption on my part.
No, I'm preaching a lot more now.
Okay.
Well, I think it's a different kind of. So, the reason I would say teaching over preaching in terms of what I enjoy most, like I love preaching and I love studying preaching and I love the art of it, but the labor of it is different for me now because I have to do it every week.
Okay.
And it is the equivalent of writing as a writer. So another part of my brain is the author side. It is the equivalent every week of writing a chapter of a book. My manuscript is 8 pages normally, double spaced, that's 16 pages. That's a chapter of a book that I have to write every week. So that part becomes the labor, but I love to do it. But I'm also not one that's going to get up unprepared if I can help it.
Right. Okay.
And so that process of preparedness is what makes it not as fun. When I was not a pastor and didn't have to write a sermon every week, I could maybe preach the same sermon over and over and over again. And I'm just enjoying myself because I know it.
Right.
And all I have to do is show up and do it.
Okay.
But as a pastor, it's every week something new. For a body of people who know you. In some ways, that's an advantage. And in other ways, it's like being in a marriage and keeping things fresh. I don't want you to feel like, you bored. Or you bored. It's like, you got to keep it spicy, man. What you doing? So that could be a challenge, after 4 years, 4.5 together. Trying to keep it spicy, not in the bedroom, in the sanctuary, keep it spicy.
Okay.
So it's a challenge, but I'm definitely preaching a lot more because, and somebody told me this when I was a staff pastor, and I found it is true, and I've seen it true from my peers as well. There's some things you don't do unless you're a senior pastor. You know, there's some invitations you don't get.
Okay.
I did a lot of youth revivals, but like 3-night revivals and things like that, you know, in the city locally that I'm doing now. You know, I didn't do that as a staff guy, you know. So you've got your regular standing, this is my Sunday morning assignment, and then, you know, 3-night revival at Mount Zion in Powhatan, you know, or wherever that may be, because they're looking for pastors to do that. So it's a different thing.
Interesting. So tell me, guidance. Do you get to, I guess you get a lot of questions maybe from younger or not as seasoned ministers or pastors as yourself, 4 years in, and I know you have other people that you go to and ask questions, but for the advice that you might give, any differences, you know, some things that you've learned in the 4 years that maybe might be different pre-senior pastor or year one senior pastor?
Yeah, I think one of the things we talked about, you know, earlier in our time together, around series building is essential for my flow and my rhythm. The way that I think about Christian education now from the pulpit, it's very different. I think like it used to be conventional wisdom that if you got a church, you kind of start by preaching those sermons that you know, so that you get time to learn people and learn the administrative, and you're not worried about writing sermons every week. That's kind of some of the conventional wisdom I used to hear. Well, with the pandemic, for me, my own experience was that nothing that I had that was old was going to work, because we were in a totally different world that looked nothing like the world before I got called to 31st Street. We were inside the house. So I'm talking, you know, about a world that we were inside the house. So it had to be a right now, not rewarmed word every week. And we were trying to establish what this would look like. And so what I've learned is that preaching is a form of leadership, you know, that we are guided by the word. At least that's how I hope we are moving at 31st Street, that we are guided by what God is speaking to me and speaking to the leadership, that is grounded in a word many times. And so if there's a move that we're going to make, I'm looking for, what does this look like in the word that I can point to and live that out. So you know, somebody recently said something about a Bible. Are we a Bible teaching church? And I was like, I think we teach from the Bible every week. Like, I think I try to do real teaching from the Bible every week. Like, not just, you know, I'm trying to give, we said this in the podcast last month, context and everything we do steeped in that. And when I say that, the caveat to that is, I think being a student of it means I'm not like cherry picking stuff. You know, I'm trying to do a deep, thoughtful dive. Like when we talked about the Taboo series, everything that we do or say may not be what it looks like on its surface, because it may not be what I learned in Sunday school, might not be what it actually says or what it actually means. And so I'm trying very hard to be faithful in interpretation and in research and all that as we work through the Bible. So even as we are making moves, I want them to be steeped in the word that is spoken, that rhema on time word from the Lord, that instruction, but also, you know, how is this played out in the biblical text? And we can learn from that. The Bible is my guide, you know? So I would tell a leader, a young pastor or a less experienced pastor, the power of series and the power of marrying the moves you make to the word itself. Because if we can see it in the word, we normally can go do it, you know? So I remember but also asking questions. So the example that popped to my mind was when I got here, we had communion on fourth Sunday, and baptism on fourth Sunday, and wanting to understand why first.
Okay.
You know, I came in, my orientation was first Sunday, but wanting to check myself on why is that? Why is your orientation first Sunday? And then why are we doing it fourth Sunday? And so on one hand, it's listening and researching and not touching anything, because we didn't do anything with it the first year. Not touching anything, just hearing, all right, what's the story behind that? And I think while we in the midst of that research process, you know, and finding out, well, it had to do with the you know, one of the pastors who was only here 2 Sundays out of the month, and this was the 2 Sundays he was here, third and fourth, and so that became, you know, but you have to, you can't just come in and start moving stuff around, right? Why do we do like this? All right, is anybody tied to this, you know, in a very monumental earth moving way? Like, will the world fall apart if we don't do fourth Sunday? Does anybody have a personal tie to this? All right, here's why I'm thinking we should do first. And it was out of really prioritizing, you know, that seek ye first feeling, like at the first of the month, let's talk to God and let's baptize. And because I'm not bivocational in that way, or pastoring 2 congregations where I'm not going to be here, there's no reason we can't use first to second. So that reason is off the table. And I think, but then trying to live out for me that word of the first, early in the morning will I seek after you. Jesus is starting with God at the first of the day. So this whole idea of first things first, and that became a series and a teaching, and then we made the transition. So I think that would be part of the advice I would give to especially like younger pastors, to listen first, research, check yourself on why I want to do this, where is this coming from, and then let the word guide you in the teaching, and walk those things out. Take your time. I think having the mindset that this is home, we've talked about that before, and not trying to chase something else gives me the time to be patient on how we move. I think coming out of a environment that was you know, a mega church experience where we would be in staff meeting on a Tuesday, come up with a plan, and it needed to be executed by Thursday. It doesn't work that way at 31st Street, you know, but we had a staff of 100 people, right? 100 plus people. So if I was tied to that need to get things done fast, it would be a very frustrating, you know, tenure. But it is I'm not racing after anything. You know, I'm not trying to get anywhere except where God wants us to be in a particular season or time, as I understand it, for me and for the church. And so, not, you know, I know that, and this isn't just preachers or ministers, this is in people's jobs. Sometimes you go into a job thinking about the next one you're trying to get to, right? And so you're using it as a placeholder or a footstool, and that affects how you do the job. Yeah, that affects how you do the job. So just trying to tell people, like, just be faithful to where you are, and ask God for vision on what is it that we are to be, and what are the steps to get there. And if you are in it with the perspective of, I'm just here, you know, I'm not here en route to something else, I'm here, and I'm gonna try to be faithful where I'm planted, I think it gives you the patience to move at the pace you need to move at, whatever that is, you know. And so and it helps, I think, from a church perspective, it helps you to develop roots and really get to know people. Folks aren't numbers on a page. You know, we have stories, and we have issues, and we have celebrations, and if you're in a rush to get somewhere else, you'll miss all of that. You know, you'll miss all of that. And I think it's in the building of those relationships that you're more effective as a preacher and a pastor and a leader. So that would be my advice.
Okay, thank you. Another quick hit here. I heard you might be authoring a book. Is that so?
I don't know who these birdies are telling you all this stuff. It might have been me. Yeah, so actually I'm working on two. The one that prayerfully will be coming up soon is a devotional. And I don't know who's going to watch this, so I'm not going to get the title because folks steal and they'll put the book out before I do.
Right.
But I can tell you what inspired it. It was in this season, God has kind of reignited my passion for young people in particular. I was able to do a few revivals and some work with some young people in the month of June in particular that really, like, I asked them to open up in a way, be transparent and vulnerable in a way that they responded to hundreds of kids, and share with me what they were dealing with. And some of the stuff that they were dealing with was just heartbreaking. It was just absolutely heartbreaking. And these are church kids, you know, that I'm engaging with. And I wanted to, and I know that it's a microcosm of what a lot of people are dealing with, because these are adult issues that children are dealing with, which is why I think we got to be thoughtful about the way that we engage young people. This should not be daycare. You know, they are dealing with soul, life, death issues. And so this devotional, the goal of it is to present a few characters from the text that are dealing with some of the things that I heard were pain points for those young people, and walking through the narrative of a few of those that stories connect with some of those big ideas. So what I did was sat down and kind of deciphered, okay, anxiety and depression is an issue. All right, well, what can we learn from the life of Isaiah, you know, who is under the broom tree ready to go? And one of the things that I see in devotionals, some of them are spotty. Like one day you're in Romans, the next day you're in Psalm, the next day so there's not the continuity of story that helps you get a deeper understanding of these people.
Okay.
So the way that I'm trying to approach this is, and it's not fully done yet, but the way I want to approach it is each week, those days you're walking with the same character, their story. And so the devotional for the day is another part of that chapter or another part of that story. So you leave reading the devotional, you get your daily bread, but you also leave reading the book with a deeper understanding of specific people who had specific issues that are tied to some of the issues that I heard are really prevalent. So that's that book. I hope that can be out in September or October. That's the hope.
Okay.
We'll see what time looks like. But yeah, that's the goal there. And then at the top of the year, I really want to do something that is designed for church leaders around what we've learned about culture. You know, one of our, and I want to shout out Dr. Corey Gibson. He's going to be with us for church anniversary, but he was listening to our series on the culture, and there was a particular message, and he asked me, can you take that message, turn it into a training for our team, for our staff, because that's what we need to know and hear. And I did. So I met with them at the top of the year, and then that presentation became a presentation at the Hamptons Ministers Conference in June. And there were 100 people in my class, 100 pastors in my class, that all wanted to continue to build on the ideas that came out of our culture series. So I think that what I'd like to do is figure out a way to sit down and add a little bit more meat to those ideas, but help churches and church leaders kind of learn from some of the things that we've learned about building culture, and put that in the book form. And I've seen already that the material has been a blessing to folks, and I think if it's been a blessing to those 100 pastors and our digital sister church there, I think that it can help some other people. So that's the idea.
Okay.